When someone dies on an ATV, it usually makes the news. After years of reporting on these deaths, one at a time, we realized there was a larger story. We spent months collecting data on crashes in Atlantic Canada to find out exactly how many people have died on ATVs and snowmobiles. The number we came up with is 178 people in 6 years. CBC Investigates used police records, news stories, obituaries, and interviews with families to build this list. And once we knew how many people had died, we also dug into the factors that contributed to the crashes. Let's start with where those deaths happened. New Brunswick had the most fatalities at 64. Newfoundland and Labrador was close behind at 61. But because there are about 30% fewer people in that province, its fatality rate is actually higher, with 11.5 deaths per 100,000 people. In Nova Scotia, 47 people died in ATV and snowmobile crashes, and PEI saw 6 deaths. Our investigation looked at both ATVs and snowmobiles, and we found that across the region, ATV riders accounted for about 2/3 of the deaths. New Brunswick and PEI follow that pattern, but in Nova Scotia, ATV deaths far outnumbered those happening on snow machines. And in Newfoundland and Labrador, fatal crashes were evenly divided between ATVs and snowmobiles. So who exactly is dying? We found it's mostly men, 154 male victims to just 16 female. More than half of the women who died were riding in New Brunswick. Deaths of children or teenagers in off-road vehicle crashes are not as frequent as adults. 90% of victims are over 19, with a cluster of people in their 40s and 50s. We wanted to better understand some of the reasons why people are dying and common factors in the deaths. Intoxication is a frequent theme. Alcohol or drugs were confirmed or suspected in nearly half of the deaths across the region. In New Brunswick, close to 60% of crashes involved alcohol. Newfoundland and Labrador is again an outlier, with only 1 in 5 accidents confirmed to have a connection to alcohol, possibly due to differences in how data is recorded. We found that certain types of crashes are more common. Roughly a quarter involved collisions with obstacles on the trail, including rocks, trees, buildings, or fences. Nearly as many deaths were caused by rollovers on slopes or during turns. In these cases, the drivers were often crushed by their machines. Other accidents involved striking vehicles and falling through ice. More than 1 in 5 riders who died weren't wearing helmets. These are the connections we've made that have affected families across Atlantic Canada. We cannot say what caused each of these fatal crashes, but what we can say is that there are more victims in their 40s and 50s, a significant percentage of people who died on ATVs had alcohol or drugs in their system, and about 1/5 of riders who died weren't wearing helmets.